We'll get proceedings underway. For those who are wandering in, feel free to come and take a chair. So my name is Peter Holloway. I'm the chair of St Hilary's Hope Inc. And we're conducting this evening as, I think we've titled it, an information evening. So before we get underway, I have an acknowledgement of country. So as we gather, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are those appointed by God as the traditional custodians of this land, both within the area of Balwyn and widely across this country. We pay our respects to elders past and present of the Kulin Nation for the way they have stewarded the Lord's creation. We extend that respect to all Indigenous people past and present, and those future generations who we pray will continue this task, trusting that our Creator will continue reconciling all things to Himself in Jesus Christ. Some formalities for those who wish to use the bathrooms. If you go through those doors on the left, and then you can either go down the stairs, or apparently there are some other bathrooms straight ahead, but you'll work it out. For those who are observing on YouTube, apparently we are streaming, which is the modern way of things. We're streaming, and apparently there is a live chat. So if you have questions and you're observing online, you can feel free to type up a question, and Esther, who is here, will be monitoring the feed, and at the end of the session we'll have an opportunity to work through some questions. I just want to acknowledge some people who are present. I think those who have read the letter that was sent out a while ago informing you of this evening will know that we're investigating this initiative together with St Thomas, St Burwood, and we have some people from St Thomas present here tonight. There's Naomi Schwa. It was my attempt at getting her pronunciation right. Now, Naomi is also representing the Welcome Home project, and Naomi is a refugee development consultant. So we might hear a little bit maybe from Naomi a little bit later on. I also have with me on stage Ian Wallbridge, who will be replacing me behind the microphone, thankfully, very, very shortly. And Ian has some slides to work through. And for those who are present, so people have been wandering in as we've been going through the introduction, so welcome coming out in this rather cool evening. I'm told that the heating is on, although you wouldn't know that it was, but it's still quite cool in the building here. But I'm sure it'll be a very informative evening. So that's all I wanted to say by way of introduction. So I'll hand over to Ian, and then I'll come back a bit later on and take any questions from the floor here, or any questions that have come in through the feed, and I'll direct them to the person who can answer them, which probably won't be me.
Thanks, Peter. You better take your bits with you. Thank you very much. As we put up the first slide here. At St Hilary's in the 1980s, our then minister, Peter Corney, started an assistance fund called the Personal Assistance Fund. And most of us in the church knew it as PAF. When Stephen Hale was appointed in 2009 through to 2019, he had a vision to change the Personal Assistance Fund to broaden the support that the church could offer other people. 2022, Hope Towards Helping a Persecuted Afghani Family, actually started in 2021. During COVID, a Christian organisation we heard about, or Mike heard about actually, said that they wanted to bring some persecuted Christians after the Americans had left in Afghanistan. They provided us with some pages and had a photograph of people and a description of why they had escaped Afghanistan. And there's tremendous stories in there. And at Hope, we decided that we would pray over some of those families and seek guidance as to if we, as a church, three churches get involved and perhaps bring in a family. We came and met some weeks later, and there were 6 people on the Hope Committee. During our meeting, it became apparent that 5 out of the 6 people had selected the same family: grandparents, parents and children. In those days, because of COVID, the airfare was going to be around $6,000 each, 36 grand, just to get them here, plus all the other things. And so we were sitting there running through some numbers and going, oh my goodness, where are the banks? We better rob them. But that's how it started. But the big change came in December 2001. Yes, believe it or not, Labor, Liberal and the Greens got together and agreed that we should do something based on the Canadian model, and you'll hear more about that coming up, to bring refugees into this country. So the Home Affairs contracted the Community Refugee Sponsorship Program to administer the program. And this was so different to what we had talked about in 2001 and 2022 as a Hope Committee, in that there was a proven program in here. But the big difference is most urgent overseas refugees who have been identified by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Now, I don't want to go into the idea that we still have lots of people in this country, which we do, who are not recognised, who are not going to be part of the program we're going to be talking about and learning about here. But they're still out there human, and they have a need to be recognised by our federal government. But don't get me started on that, and I have. The big thing here is that there is no family links into Australia. No family reunification, if you want. So since 21, around 200 new arrivals have come in under this program, this bipartisan program, into this country. The big difference is, when I was working with refugees and asylum seekers, is that, and if you think back to those that are here and online who were involved with the West Papuans who came to Australia in a handmade canoe in 2006, they had to fight for everything. They weren't recognised. They were illegal immigrants. Even though they were fleeing horrendous things going on in the world, you don't leave your homeland for no reason. There's always a good reason for it. But this new program, and it is so different to the one we considered a couple of years back, in that they've lined up all the ducks. Everything that every previous illegal refugee had ever wanted is now available through this bipartisan support up in Canberra, which is just brilliant. So Mike got an invitation to go to St Thomas's out in Burwood. John Carrick, for those that remember that young man. We were invited to go. So Mike and I headed along, and there was a room full of people. And the presentation was made, and Mike and I kept looking at each other going, wow, this is so different to what we were considering with the persecuted Christian family from Afghanistan, the six people I spoke of earlier. So different. And the big thing is that now we, as everyday Australians, can get a buy-in to welcoming refugees into this country. Instead of sticking them out on an island somewhere northwest of Australia, we can help integrate them. So we as a community get a greater sense of buy-in to the refugee resettlement program. There's some ownership. And out of that, we can help to maintain and further build strong public support for that program into the future. So the Community Support Program enables Australians to nominate refugees whom they wish to help migrate. That is, you get a list and the government says, look, we think this is the right one, and I guess Naomi can add more to that. But A bit like when we had the pages of pictures of families and a brief description of why people fled Afghanistan. But the other difference is the federal government pays for the airfare. It sets up all the visas. And what we then have to do is get a group of people to help these guys go to Centrelink, bank accounts, education and so forth. And more on that later. We go on to the second slide. So we have the Community Refugee Sponsorship Program. It's designed, based on the Canadian model, to a new Australian community one known as CRISP. So what does this program look like? Let's watch a video.
Community sponsorship of refugees is a groundbreaking approach to helping refugees find safety. This approach brings small groups of local citizens together to welcome and support newcomers in their communities.
My life before coming to Australia was being a refugee for 5 years in Malaysia. Coming to Australia was my beginning of life.
If we can do something better in such a rich country as Australia, to help people that are just looking for a safe place to live, I want in.
I come from a family which came to Australia as refugees, from my grandparents, so I've always felt connection and I guess a responsibility to that.
We felt really committed to the resources.
Canada's successfully for decades, but now that growing number of with Australia to do their bit.
We were able to give them both computers, laptops through a school that was getting rid of their laptops, which was wonderful.
I really enjoy meeting people from other cultures. I gain a lot from it.
We'll be able to get people settled here, so that's obviously the aim of the exercise.
This approach is not only a way to help refugees reach safety in Australia, but also help newcomers flourish in their new communities. Sponsor groups help refugees find employment, succeed in their education, learn English, navigate essential services, and find friendship. Oh, and explain that huntsman spiders are harmless, but magpies are dangerous.
Before I come Ararat, I don't have a license. Paul every day he's give me license. That's why now I have a license. Life is very easy. Alhamdulillah.
The best part really is getting to know people. I mean, the resilience that people have that have had to get out of war-torn countries and settle into another place, it's just so admirable.
To make this all happen, but the end result of one another in practical.
Just being there as a friend and advisor, because, they don't know how things are set up here.
Well, we've now settled 2 families and, as I've said, totally furnished 2 houses.
It's quite an easy thing to do because, I speak the language, I know the culture, but it means so much to them because they don't. I was their first mate, so I was able to help them.
Na mimi nimependa kutoka nyumbani kuja hapa kusherehekea kwa pamoja. Hata ile kukaa na kuwa na mawazo linapunguka.
Community sponsorship can not only help people find their feet quickly in their new communities, it can also provide a way for smaller regional cities and towns to welcome refugees.
We have fun with Eileen, we have fun with each other, the kids have fun. I think we're just a good crew.
And the dog.
And the dog.
One beautiful moment was they rang me and said, would you be godmother to the little daughter? And that was really...
Friendship overcomes a lot of barriers.
Very rewarding to see people gradually become more independent from us.
Yeah, very rewarding, like I said, I'm coming out of after the test, coming out of the Vic roads and holding up his licence.
And then he got out of the car and he saw me and he danced all the way over. Oh, I'm so happy to see you.
The very best part is their coffee.
For me, the best part is to interact with the kids. You can see in them how much this country can offer them, you know, how their horizons have broadened all of a sudden by just being here.
It's been probably one of the best things I've ever done.
It's been an excellent experience in working together.
Being with them, they helped me to get a job that is my dream job, being in a crew and in the film industry, and I'm so glad with that.
I think it's been wonderful because we've all stepped into probably our skill set too of where we could give the support.
It's going to have to be people power that makes a difference. They've got initiative, they're just wonderful people that if you can get involved with them, it's only going to benefit you. It's going to benefit the country long term.
They feel accepted by us and respected and valued. All those really good things that people want.
A lot of Australians have never met a refugee, so this is an opportunity to help and to meet them and to get that rewarding interaction. When you do those things, it is viral, I believe, and I think that the more kindness you show people, the more that they will carry that forward.
So I would strongly recommend neighbourhood groups get together and look after, support newly arrived refugee to Australia. It's incredibly rewarding.
Ni mzuri na nafurahi kwa kuwa amenisapoti, tuko pamoja, tuendelee kwa pamoja. Okay.
If you've ever felt like you wanted to do something practical and meaningful to help address the global refugee situation, consider getting involved. Visit refugeesponsorship.org.au.
So you can see here on the screen the number of visas that they're going to bring through. It's 1,500. But for us, those that initially in hope looked at bringing the persecuted Christian family from Afghanistan in, the last sentence or two sentences here, that's what was not in the first one. There was no support. We were kind of on our own. We were going to learn as we went. But here, and we actually one night ended up speaking to Ian up in Goulburn, Monk, something rather. Sorry? Urban Monk up in Goulburn, as they brought in their first people. And he started talking about these things, that there's training for us. We actually get trained by people who've put this program together. And you've got to remember that it's based on a 25-year-old program out of Canada. They've been doing it. Now, speaking about Canada, when we applied for the Afghani family, in the 12 months, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Peter or Mike, we didn't hear anything from the Department of Home Affairs to acknowledge the application we'd put in. I reckon personally that's, yeah. And all of a sudden, we got a message to say the family that we had prayed about and had selected, in 7 days, the Canadian government had them on Canadian soil in 7 days. And in 1 year, we couldn't even get an acknowledgement. So this bipartisan support and this whole new program is what was missing. It's really exciting. Next slide, thanks. Matty Kay. Okay, challenge, yeah, working. We've got to work with Dave and Naomi and some other people there. We haven't done that before with the West Papuans under Pete Corney. It was all here and the community got together and did things. So that's something new for us. But what we need is a team of willing workers to assist the refugees, and I'll give more on that later. The finances. The running of the Hope Op Shop has been an absolute blessing to St Hills. The majority of the money this program requires, and we're going, it's 25 grand, so it's 12 and a half from St Thomas and St Hills, has come from the op shop. Every cent that comes into the op shop is given away to mission and to different programs. So it's absolutely fantastic. And after tonight, when hopefully we get some volunteers to come in, the second last point, we need to fill in an application with St Thomas's and get the ball rolling. Next one, thank you. Whoop, no, skipped one. Skipped a couple. Pre-arrival, yep. Now, it was really interesting. Ian from Goulburn was talking about this. The good old federal government, bless their little hearts, they had 24 hours notice that they were coming in. 24 hours. So that's pretty short. So they had to do a couple of these things. Accommodate. Where are they going to stay? 24 hours. Hang on, guys. 24 hours. So they really ran around in a few circles there. You've got to have someone at the airport to meet them. Then you've got language problems. But this whole program has an interpreter service. The federal government has an interpreter service that Crisp is able to tap into, because I don't speak Mongolian or out of Afghani or whatever it is. Transit assistants, are they coming into Sydney or are they coming directly into Melbourne or to Perth? If they're coming into another, how are we going to get them through, no English potentially, and get them here safely into Melbourne? The big question is securing long-term housing. And I will admit that that's one that's right up there. But perhaps people have a rental property within the two churches and they're willing to put it to one side. Perhaps there's a vestry or some church that's hasn't got a minister at the moment, but they've got a property available that we could use. There's lots of different things. Provide a welcome pack. I remember when I was working with a guy from, he's a marathon runner, Samuel, in Africa. What's the big country? Ethiopia. I took him over to the western suburbs to a specialty shop. We gave him some money and he bought some food that he recognised, and the smile on his face was absolutely priceless. So we've got to provide some sort of welcoming pack. I mean, you could imagine that one of the first things they probably want to do is ring someone and say, I'm here. I'm here. I'm safe. There's no bombs going off outside. I don't have to sleep under a piece of blue plastic from the United Nations tonight. I've got food. They've given me all this food. I've got a thing called a fridge. I've got a stove. And Peter, you remember with the West Papuans, they had to learn how to use gas. They'd never had gas in their life. So there's lots of things that we need to do there. And eventually the income support is going to come from Centrelink, which is about a 2-week process. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a healthcare card or something from Centrelink, but 2 weeks doesn't do it. And then, of course, a bank, they've got to have a bank account. Centrelink needs to pay them. So it's got to have a bank account. They need help with that. They don't speak English. If you speak English, then you're great. You've got a one-up on these guys. Medicare, Centrelink and so forth. Next one, thank you. Okay. Maybe they've got children. Little kids, middle kids, up kids, tertiary education. And the big one is English classes. This is really emphasised out of Goulburn with Ian. He really, really emphasised that. And those in St Hills that with the West Papuans will know what it's like when they had these guys come in and not one word of English. Public transport, Mikey, I mean, come on, Mikey, goodness me, yes. Where are the local shops? How can we help them with their food and their dietary needs because they've been used to something else? Healthcare, need to get a health check. Like I know when some of the West Papuans came, Jeffrey had cancer in his throat and he didn't know until he got into Western medicine. So we've got to do that. We've got to get some healthcare, basic stuff, clothes from the op shop. Fantastic, we can do that. I've been able to link with the guy from over in Essendon, Maribyrnong, who says, yeah, you want a fridge? We can get you a fridge. You want beds? We can get you bread. We can get you anything. You'll be right. So we've got to support them in their first 12 months. After that, they can be on their own. And if we start to struggle, Chris will come in and take over the family and help us. They won't leave us in the lurch. Making friends, there's a big one. Building networks. I mean, there's nothing like, if you have ever travelled internationally, you get to an airport and you hear the Aussie accent. You think, yes, I know what that's like. If you know what that's like, then imagine what it's going to be like for these guys. Group social and professional networks. It's all about who you know, not what you know. So we're looking for people that have got some connections out there. Most of us think, oh, I haven't got much. I don't know about you. I don't like asking for help. I really don't. I'm independent. I can do this. And then I pay someone to come and fix up the mess I just created. But you can imagine you have got lots of people that you could tap on. And my wife always says to me, Ian, there's only 3 things. Yes, maybe, no. That's it. Don't make the decision, ask the question, wait for the answer. Hobbies, sports, engaging. The little kids need to get involved in the local community, probably soccer, I imagine. You see videos of them in the refugee camps, kicking all sorts of stuff. Thank you. Lucky last. If you've got questions, take a photo of this screen and go to those websites and have a look. There are some amazing things in there that gives you a lot of information. So we're looking for people, initially a small number of people, 2 or 3, 4 people, to join me from St Hills to work with St Thomas's people, to get to know them, work together as a group and find out what our interests and specialties are and to go from there. We need to be able to ask them for help. I'm going to struggle with that, but that's okay, when we need to. But Hope needs another team of people sitting behind us who we could tap on the shoulder and say, this family needs a school. Can you please go and represent them in the local school wherever they're living? Can you take them to the bank? Can you take them to Centrelink and fix up the healthcare problem? Transport, you can only imagine. Mikey, you ever been tapped and those guys in uniforms come to... I remember when the West Papuans... Oh, I'm going to go back to this. We had a Christmas party down in Richmond at St Ignace in the hall there, one of the Christmases. And unfortunately, some death threats had been made through SMSs. And so we made contact with the police. And that night, they called the SWAT guys, the guys in big 15 axe handles across in a black van and bulletproof vests and stuff, what do they call the critical incident team, were sitting outside in a blacked out van. And one of the guys came to the door, knocked on the door, and one of the West Papuans opened it. And he immediately thought, no, we're going to get beaten up here. Women are going to get raped. This is going to be shocking. That's one of the differences. We need to help these guys realise that the police are there to help you. The hospitals are there to help you. And that's our role, is to come together and to try and help these guys. We have no idea what it's like to live in a country where the children play in bombed buildings, or they duck out of a missile that's coming in, or they have to fight for food in the refugee camp because there's insufficient food. We have no idea at all. To help them shopping. If you've got no experience, fantastic. You're what we need. Mistakes are allowed, and there'll be a few. We're not perfect. We're all in this together. Do you speak English? You're up on these guys. One already. You're in there. You think you don't know, but you know a lot more than any newly arrived refugee in this country. Absolutely. Peter's going to come back up and comments questions to young Pete.
Well, thanks very much, Ian. There's a lot to absorb. And I think we can say, as the committee that's been talking about this opportunity, that we're very excited about it. We think that the Canadian model seems to be a model that has proven to be successful, and there's no reason why it can't be successful here. We're very excited to be working with St Thomas's and with Dave and a few people who we have some familiarity with already, so that's great. In terms of timing, I might start off the questions, and Esther can yell out if there's a question that's come in on the feed. But I might start off with a question, and Ian, you might know the answer, or Naomi, you might know the answer too. But in terms of the timing of all of this, it's my understanding that the first thing we have to do is become accredited or registered or whatever the expression is. And I'm imagining that that's a process that might take a few months, but I'm just guessing. So I might start there. In terms of the timing of all of this, what can you say about that?
Yeah, hi, it's great to be here. It is a process, and a lot of the timing depends on the group and how ready they are. So there's a number of stages we have to go through. The first is everybody has to have an individual application form that they complete, every member of the group, and that involves things like police checks, working with children's checks, all of that kind of paperwork and bureaucracy. So depending on how quickly every member of the group can get their individual applications done, then there's a number of other things a number of other stages, a fundraising plan if that's needed, but the finances are pretty sorted for this group, thankfully. A bit of a plan for the group, a settlement plan is what they call it. So if you've got some ideas about what you would do for short-term accommodation, how you would go about looking for longer-term accommodation, just each of the things that are needed, they need us to have a bit of a plan around that. And then there's the whole training that Ian mentioned. And a large part of that training initially is a group covenant. So whoever commits to being a part of this community support group, which is what they're called by CRISP, they have to come up with a group covenant together. And CRISA, the Community Refugee Support Group, they really help us work through that, because this is a commitment that we not only have to make to the refugee families, but we have to make to each other in the group. So we've got to commit for a year and go through all of those things, the what ifs. Okay, what if somebody in the group gets sick and can't be a part of it, or loses their job, or if there's conflict in the group? All of those things are worked through so that we just have a real commitment between one another about how we're going to work out differences. If we've got different ideas of how to relate to the family, all of those things. It's a really robust process, and I think we can have great confidence in that. And then the training that they do with us is really, really robust as well. So that's a long way of saying it could be anywhere from a month to 3 months. You know, like it's really how coordinated everyone is and gets onto their paperwork and doing all of those bits.
Thank you. And you've mentioned a couple of times the group, or references to the group, and, yes. And I'm sure people here have questions about, how can they respectively get involved in all of this. I'll say my understanding and then I can be corrected, but when we refer to the group, it's really the steering committee or the fronting group, the people who would be noted and go through the training. And so what we're looking for is people who have an interest to nominate themselves to participate in the group at that level. I'm imagining that group would be 8 to 10 people or something of that magnitude.
Yeah, CRISA has a requirement that there are five adults from 5 different households. So if you're a couple, that counts as 1. Okay, so 5 adults from 5 different households, and that's the minimum. But it can be much more than that. It can be as many as you like. And yeah, that group, as Peter rightly pointed out, these are the people who actually sign up to be a part of that community support group. That's where the buck stops. they're responsible, okay? So it doesn't mean that, like he said, that we can't use that whole church approach is beautiful, that we can tap into the broader congregation and say, oh, can you come and give some driving lessons? Or who's got time to do this? Or who's really excited about doing some tutoring? Churches are perfectly set up for this program because we can call on the broader church, and we've got the whole church who can be praying for us and praying for the family. But that small group, the community support group, they are the ones who ultimately have the responsibility for meeting some of these settlement needs and caring for the family.
Yeah, so we're certainly interested if you have a particular interest in becoming a member of that group. We're certainly very interested to hear about that. But also we're interested for people to commit to being I'll call it the second tier, the broader, because this is only really going to work if the steering committee or the group or whatever we like to call it is backed up by the whole of the church family or the church's families. And driving lessons or whatever it might be. And, some of us have experience of the West Papuans that Ian spoke about, and there were multitude of ways in which people were able to contribute and just help out. And so I think what we're looking for is people who are prepared to commit to providing that level of support, whatever that might be. And, we don't really know what it might be. We won't really know until we would be allocated a family and we would know what the particular needs might be. So there's various layers of involvement that are possible, but we're very interested to hear from you if you have that level of interest. So I'll now ask Esther, have there been any questions that have arrived via?
Saturday mornings, so maybe those ESL classes at St Thomas could be a good resource that we've got. So yeah, everyone that's listening on at home, please feel free to type your questions in the chat and we'll pass them on. There's none more at the moment.
Okay, and for the people present, if you have a question, don't feel shy, just put your hand up and Ian's the roving mic.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Are you planning to work together with the Faraks church? Because they have different, Iraqis and Afghanis and...
You mean Faraj?
Yes.
Yeah. Look, it's possible.
I just thought maybe they have people they speak the same language?
Look, it's absolutely possible, if not likely. I was actually bumped into someone just recently who had participated in one of these programs supported and had already supported a family through CRISP, and they were located in an area not too far from here, but they ended up interacting with community groups down in Dandenong because that was where the family had natural connections with other people of similar background were located in the Dandenong region. Now, Farage is in Coburg. We've also got churches in Craigieburn and all. So absolutely, we would be looking at that. That's an excellent example of where we've got relationships and touch points that we would draw upon that would be reflective of the particular needs of the family. But we don't really know what those needs will be until we're nominated a particular family.
And one of the things I learned from the West Papuans is it's okay to be able to speak the language, but there are dialects within. So you might just say, yeah, we'll go to Farak's church, but no, hang on, there's no one there that speaks the dialect. So you've really got to meet the people and understand them, get to know them so we can really, really help them.
Yes, that's correct. And that's really we're hoping a starting point, okay? We're really wanting to pool our resources and really see one family come through and go through the year successfully. And hopefully that's just the beginning, right? Hopefully then people see it in action and they get so inspired and think, oh, I can do that. And then we can take on other groups. So it's just, as we start off, it's a very new venture. It's very new for people to get their heads around. So while we do that, we just thought this joint approach would be the best way to go.
Yeah, so for those online, the question was, with the combined effort of St Hilary's and St Thomas, would there only be the one family? And as Naomi has said initially, that's the plan. We're sort of, shyly dipping our toe in the water. But if the fellow that we spoke to from Goulburn is an example, I mean, they were very nervous about initially getting involved, and I think they're up to their third family now. I think that's right. And, the comment that he made to us when we spoke to him, Ian was his name as well, is that right? Actually, it was his wife's comment that in all of they were, I don't know what age they would be, but long lived. But they had made the comment. The wife had made the comment that looking back at their life, it was one of the best things they'd ever done. And so they were up to their third family now, and probably the indications are that it'll become a fourth and fifth, and who knows.
And that's definitely what's been happening when groups form and they take on a family. Often, once that 12 months is done, they're like, oh, they just roll it over and then do it all again. Just in terms of that language question and everything, we as a group actually do have some choice and agency in choosing where the family that we want to have, whether we want it to be some singles, whether we want a family, all of those are things that we have some agency in. So if you've got a particular passion to work with people from Afghanistan, well, you can request that. The sad reality is that there are refugees from everywhere, and there are billions of them, and so there is a huge amount of need, and there are people waiting in refugee camps all around the world right now. So if you think we're set up, we can invite a family, then we can talk to CRESA and put that in our application and say, yeah, we'd love to work with a family. Be careful, some of these families are very large. All the Afghan families I've been working with have about 10 kids. So you can specify if you want a large family, a small family, whatever you think that we're ready to kind of launch into. And then those are things that they can take into consideration when doing the matching. And then you have conversations with the family while they're still overseas, in their refugee camps, and we get to talk and understand whether they want to live in the city or the country. All those things come into where they will be matched. Yeah.
A quick comment about the family. When we were considering the first time, we were asked to consider a Muslim family, 2 wives and 12 children. Serious.
Esther, anything online? Nothing online. So any other questions, Dave?
I've got a question, then I'm going to answer if that's all right. So why would you do it with St Thomas? So we were discussing this, and speaking for myself, there was just, a bit of, I've never done something like this before. At St Thomas, we've got 4 household groups interested in it, but we still felt, or I felt, a bit unsure. So we thought, in the first instance, let's do it together and make a go of that. And if it goes well, we can split and divide and do this many more times. But as a starter, let's do it together. So there's a small group at St Thomas keen to get a small group at St Hills.
That's right. It was interesting that the day that Naomi ran, when it came to the end, we were asked to form groups, And there were some Mike's nodding away. There were some very large groups, and Mike and I headed over and thought, oh, yeah, can we join in? No. And then over on the side near the door was Dave and Denise and some other guys from St Thomas's, and there was Mike and Ian, so we wandered over and sat with them and we started just chatting. It just happened like that. That's how it all came together on that afternoon.
Any last questions? If not, we might draw the proceedings to a close. So hopefully we've achieved our objective of providing information. And I thank Ian and Naomi for the contributions that you've respectively made. This is only the start of the conversation, it's not the end, so there'll be lots of other opportunities if a question comes to you afterwards that you thought you would have liked. Esther just tells me that there's something online now.
A question we might just answer before we finish up is, if someone is keen, who should they talk to and how shall we get this started?
It's probably, if at least from the St Hilary's perspective or the St Hilary's Hope perspective, it's probably best if you go through Mike. Mike has an email address that's available on the website. From the St Thomas perspective, what would be the best thing, Dave or Naomi? Go through you two? Denise, okay. Mike.
The wife.
Ian's heading up the group. There was a preliminary meeting with St Thomas, and he's going on holiday middle of June. We'd like to get an application in before the end of May, which really means at least 3 people to join Ian, and then that's enough to join with St Thomas, bang in the application, and then even while Ian's away, the deputy lead of the group can answer questions and keep it moving. So it'd be really nice if in the next few days people apply, and do apply to Ian directly or me. So if I get any names, I'll tell Ian within 10 minutes anyway.
Okay, so there's a lot to take in, so hopefully we've given you some food for thought. So thank you everyone who's attended in person, and thanks for everyone who's attended online. So we'll call it a close at that.